Welcome to the very first episode on the Fearless Femme podcast with me, your host, Becky Jane Stevenson. I know, some of you tuning in right now have been like, it's about time. Well, it's better late than never. So if you are new to me and you don't know who I am and you don't know what I do, I am the triple threat creative visionary specializing in identity and confidence in yourself, your videos, and your visuals. So I get to help women bust out of the status quo and live life as whoever they choose to be in all of their wildest of ways. I am also a woman with 5 kids. Cue the sharp intake of breath. Yes, you heard that right. I am here to also end the belief that a woman can't be a mother and a successful woman of impact without the hustle and all of the sacrifice. Now, in this episode, I am going to be sharing with you my journey, my story, how I got to this point, and how I went from the very stereotypical, air quote, just a mum, to what I do now with a successful business, with incredible clients, and a thriving life and family life as well. So let's dig in. So I love accessing all of the parts of me, all of those different flavours, the confidence, the sassy, bold, creative and daring sides that I get to radiate into my life. And I do so without apologising for it. But part of my passion is I love helping other women like you to achieve that as well. Whether you want to tap into your confidence and express yourself in person, whether that's online, within your business, or even down to your style, then I've got you. If you want the safest place to reconnect with who you are, your wildest self, then I am here for you. So let's start with where it all began, because for the longest time, all I found myself doing was telling adults around me what I thought they wanted to hear. I wanted to please them. I wanted to be the good girl. Instead of always feeling like I was disappointing people, always feeling like I was an outsider or an outcast or a weirdo and just couldn't fit in. Now, it's interesting in my story because I moved around quite a lot, especially in my younger years, so I was often having to recreate my identity. I was often trying to fit in and blend into the background so that people wouldn't spot this socially awkward, shy, weird new girl. So if this is something that you recognize, then you aren't alone in this. We're in a world where there are a lot of societal expectations that weigh really heavy upon women. So what I'm going to be sharing with you in this podcast is how my story, how I went from a woman not knowing her value or her worth, or how to be powerful, how to own that, and how to be that confident woman of impact, not just impacting other people, but the kind of impact that impacts the quality of your life, impacts how you feel as you go through your life, how you feel when you wake up every day. So back before I entered the business space, I was a mum of 3 wonderful children, yet I often felt like one day was often rolling into another. It was almost like Groundhog Day. Sometimes I'd be going through the motions and doing the things that I thought it meant to be a good mum, it meant to be a good person, but it just felt like sometimes I was going through the motions and I was clock watching until my children could go to bed and I could sit in front of another pointless TV show before falling asleep and then doing it all over again the next day. Like, I had the stability, I had the love, I had the relationship, I had the house, I had the kids, I had what I'd always dreamed of, a family of my own to love and to nurture, something unconditional that wouldn't repeat on my own childhood experiences. Yet I felt like something was missing. There was always something in the background for me, something in the back of my mind, something that I just genuinely felt deep down. Like I was craving something. And, it felt like this, not an emptiness, but it felt similar. It felt like I was craving something more than what I had. And sometimes I felt angry at myself, for letting myself go. Like my family life should be enough, my children should be enough, I should be satisfied with that, right? And we're often fed this story that we should be happy with what we've got. We shouldn't ask for more because, we have more than most. There's this mentality that it's selfish and it's greedy to want more than what you have. So I often used to really be quite hard on myself, and feel a lot of shame and a lot of guilt because I'd look at my children and I think, why aren't they enough for me to feel like I have the perfect life? The thing is, for many women, motherhood is life's greatest blessing, and being a mother is fulfilling enough for some women, and that's absolutely beautiful. But for others, like myself, I'd be called selfish for not appreciating all that I had. That some women sadly couldn't have what I had. Some women couldn't conceive. Some women, had suffered losses. So that just added to the weight of the guilt and the shame that I was feeling. But I couldn't help asking myself, was I truly selfish? Why wasn't having a family enough for me? And I couldn't shake this feeling of disillusionment of what family life should feel like. And I started to explore that even more, this disillusionment, which I feel a lot of women go through. And I feel like sometimes I've been a little bit fortunate in that I've been able to experience that quite early on. So I started experiencing this quote disillusionment a number of years ago. So I feel like I've got in there at the right time to start unpicking all of this. And this disillusionment, it doesn't come from who you're being in your life or that what you have in your life isn't enough, but it's the story that we're sold. It's the story that gets passed down from mother to daughter through the generations, through schooling, through everything in society about what it means when you grow up. You get, you find the love of your life, you fall in love, you get married, you have children, you all live happily ever after. That's the story we're sold, right? I want a refund. But I also got very exhausted and I was getting really tired. There never seemed to be a moment to do anything that I wanted to do. Buying for myself often came with a heavy price of shame and beating myself up, so I just didn't. Everything felt like I was at the bottom of the list. If there was enough time left, then I would do something for me. If there was a spare 5 minutes, then I would do something for me, and like I said, it was getting really tiring with all of the guilt and the shame that I was piling on to myself. And then when I sat back and I thought about it, and this was the biggest kickstart that I needed, I thought about my children as adults and being on my own and no longer feeling needed. I was absolutely terrified. I came to learn that this is actually known as empty nest syndrome. So when our children grow and fly the nest and, there's just us rattling around the house, that absolutely terrified me. And I ended up actually overcompensating and started living my life through my children because I just wouldn't put myself first, period. Anything that I did that I wanted to enjoy had to come with almost like a motive. Like if I wanted to go out and do something fun, then I would book something fun that was fun for my children too. I just wouldn't do anything that was solely for the benefit of me. And it all came spilling out one day. I was stood at the kitchen sink. I was washing some dishes, listening to my kids in the background, squabbling, or what kids do when they're round at a dinner table. And I was washing these dishes, and I was staring out of the kitchen window. It was getting late. It was getting dark, and I knew that they'd be going to bed soon. I knew that their dad would be arriving home from his work. So it's almost like I could exhale. I think, "Oh, another day done. I can go to sleep." And At that moment in time, I was deep in my own thoughts, and the penny finally dropped that this wasn't actually about me not wanting the life that I had and not being grateful for what I had. I just didn't want to live it this way. I didn't like the version that I was living, to always be sacrificing, to always being the yes woman with no boundaries, always putting somebody else first because that's what it meant to be a good woman. That's what it meant to be a good mother, you would constantly sacrifice your own needs, your own wants, and even your boundaries, so long as your family was happy, because, mothers are the glue of the family. Do you not think sometimes it can just feel like such a heavy burden to carry? Not a burden as, we're lumbered with it because we choose to become mothers, but we don't choose to be sold a story of what family life should be like and how we should be in it. So like I say, I had to admit in that moment that I didn't want to be living the life that I was living. Something needed to give. I didn't want to be a stranger to myself anymore. Yes, I had chosen to be a mother, but I hadn't chosen to lose my identity with it all. And that's another big key piece in the work that I do as well, is that women, before they choose to become a mother, they need to be supported in how to make sure that they keep hold of a sense of who they are. Because when we transition into motherhood, yes, our identity changes, we grow, we evolve, we step into this new version, because all of a sudden it isn't just about us anymore. Our heart expands, and it's such a beautiful journey. But it's very easy to lose yourself into the whole identity of being just mum. I hadn't chosen a life that didn't honour the woman that I truly was deep inside, my wildest self. I actually wasn't giving my inner self a voice, and I'd actually been ignoring her and denying her for such a long time. And something inevitably had to give, and it did. Something snapped inside of me that night, not snapped in anger, but something snapped, something twigged. It was time for me to break free of these self-imposed chains and actually start stepping out there as the woman that I'd actually hidden away and silenced. A version of me that I refused to accept, that being a mother should be my only identity, but actually the truth is it was actually only one side of me. I knew I wanted more. I started to believe that damn sure I was deserving of more. I didn't know what. It had been so long since I actually sat and asked myself the question, what is it that I actually want for myself? What is it that I do for me that truly brings me a sense of fulfillment, a sense of happiness and joy and passion and all of the emotions that I wanted to feel that were just for me, that I didn't have to share. I didn't have to share that experience with my kids. They were just for me. But I didn't know, because I'd spent so long in this identity that I'd forgotten. And in that moment when I had this great epiphany, there was this defiance and like a rebellion against all of these stories and rules and conditioning about what it means to be a mother. But to be a woman in this world, and this was a big turning point for me. I was done being a backseat passenger in my own life, and I knew I needed to take control, to start putting me first, to discover who I was, what I could do, and realised that my identity hadn't been lost. It had just been buried under so many layers of this conformity, that I set out on a mission to rediscover myself, to reconnect to all of the versions of myself that I've been, all of the parts of me that I had kind of hidden from the world and not allowed people to see. So part of my persona, I guess, in the world was I was a bit of a chameleon, and because it was scary allowing people to see the real me. So it wasn't easy. I had to heal what felt fractured within me. I don't use the word broken because I really truly don't believe people are broken. I feel like we have parts of ourselves that do get fractured, and fractures heal. So I had to go on my own healing journey, and I had to call parts of myself back home, back to me, and reconnecting them, showing up with love and acceptance for every version of myself that I'd been, every version that I'd molded into someone else's version of acceptable, the acceptable idea of me in the world. And the more I uncovered about myself under the surface, the clearer I got about who I was, that I was valuable, that I could show up without ever being sorry for who I was. And this is, a great moment to share, like the visual representation of that. So if you imagine that your entire being, your identity is like this brick wall, and every brick in that wall is a version of you that you have ever been. And if you are hiding parts of yourself, of those versions, or you are denying those versions, or you're shaming or blaming or not forgiving yourself, then that brick wall, those bricks are just empty spaces. So by reconnecting with yourself, by going back through every layer that you've been, every version that you've been, you're essentially putting a new brick into that hole, and you are strengthening who you are being in the world. You are uncovering parts of you that you thought were lost, and you find a new appreciation for all you may have been through, all you've experienced that has brought you to this point here and now. Because when you stand up for every version of you that you've been, for every version where you did the best you could with what you knew how to do, when you step up for you in that way, you are stepping up for every version that you have been. You are going back essentially, and you are saying it's okay. It's okay. And that is such a powerful thing to be able to do. So the real turning point for me was when I began to invest in myself, slowly and in small ways at first, because, the guilt can get kind of overwhelming, and, feeling like incredibly selfish, because I could have bought my children some new clothes or some new shoes or some new toys, despite the fact that they had, overflowing wardrobes and so many pairs of shoes that they didn't really actually need them. So I started to invest in myself slowly and in small ways. And it did, once I got over the guilt, it felt really intoxicating to actually put myself first in all of the best ways. Not only because I wanted to, but because I knew I needed to. And from there, I have continually invested in me, invested in my growth, allowed myself to do things that the past me would be so shocked about. So my mission has never been more clear to me, and that is to help women like you, not just to reclaim that space, but to know that you have always been worthy of taking up that space with confidence, to claim what you might feel has been left on the table because you felt unworthy, or you felt that it wasn't okay for you to go and take from that table. To stand up and say to the world, this is me, all of me, and if I'm too much, go find less. To speak your desires and step up for them proudly, confidently, without apology, and to help women like you guide yourselves back to that full radical self-acceptance and self-love that actually becomes the key to you unlocking your truest potential. The thing is, as women, we also often think that we have to do this all alone, like it's a solitary journey. It's not. Okay, with anything, with any healing, with any growth, they say it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to heal. You need your people around you. So I didn't do it all alone. I surrounded myself with powerful women, of course. Some women that in the beginning intimidated me, but for all the best reasons. So I surrounded myself with powerful women such as Desislava Dobreva, who is one of my business mentors, and Guna Malder, who is one of my absolutely beautiful friends, who have been two of my biggest inspirations and motivators, women who have had my back all the way for the last 4 years now. And of course, women such as Vicky Wagstaff, who's part of my team, because every woman needs a right-hand woman who can be the calm to the chaos, right? And that's Vicky. Women who dare to speak their truth and own who they are in the world, so much so that it makes it safe for other women to do the same. And that's what these women that I surrounded myself with helped me to kind of step into this version of me, to keep evolving, to keep stripping back those layers, to keep exploring new depths of myself. It's because I surrounded myself with successful, inspiring, and powerful women such as the ladies I've just mentioned, because it made it safe for me to do the same. So that's my story. There is obviously a lot more, but I would need a whole week of a podcast to delve into everything else. But in a nutshell, that's how I went from feeling like I was just a mum to a woman of impact today. So thank you for joining me on the very first episode of The Fearless Femme. If you found any part of my story resonates with you, I always get shudders when I say that word. We need to find a new one. If you are ready to start reclaiming your own space and your identity, then subscribe to this podcast and stay tuned for more episodes. And let's continue the journey together, breaking those barriers and living our wildest, most authentic lives. So you can follow me on social media linked below, where you can find support and more inspiration. Plus, I have a free little gift for you that's designed to kickstart your journey into fearless confidence. So I'd love to hear from you. Please do drop me a message with your thoughts or suggestions on what topics you would like to hear me cover in future episodes. And please remember, you deserve to take up space to live life on your terms. Until next time, stay wild and unapologetic.